Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, and here we are back for part 2 of our look at the Tomb King's special unit section of their army roster. So this faction focus is looking at 8th edition army book rules and flavour of how units and characters played in the 8th edition and how that might influence how units feel and play in Warhammer The Old World. So, going straight into it, hopefully you've already seen part 1 as we now move into part 2. Starting us off, we have the Tomb Swarm. So, above average wounds, attacks, leadership, low strength, toughness and initiative, no equipment, and the unit size was a minimum of 2 bases. They did get poisoned attacks, so auto wounding on 6s, and they do get entombed beneath the sands. Pretty niche unit overall. That's too expensive in points per base for the output, I think was the main thing here. They were pretty expensive. I almost never saw the unit on the tabletop. You could get an Ashabti model for 10 points more that would probably do more overall. Would normally be used for movement disruption, but just too slow because of with its low movement. It could easily be avoided. What I'd like to see in Warhammer The Old World is this to be, for those that are familiar with the Necron Canoptek Scarab swarms, I'd like to see something similar there where these can fly and, even if they can't march, fly will give them a 10-inch move, get them mobile, get them more able to be involved and do their role, which is disrupting enemy units. So if we are going to see a Tomb Swarm, I'd like them to play in that sort of fashion. They were just too expensive for what they could do and too slow for what they needed to do in the 8th edition. Next up is the Carrion. So looking at the picture there, I have to say this is my least favourite looking model of the Tomb King line, and unfortunately to boot, their look matched their performance stats. They got above average attacks but low weapon skill, wounds, initiative and leadership, no equipment, and the unit size was 3. No special rules except fly, so they could move 10 inches. So they're essentially a poor output flying unit with no durability or special rules, and I never saw them on the tabletop, and I didn't even own any. And they also can't march, so if you're going to have this kind of weak flying unit to do disruption, maybe go after war machines and stuff like that, the fact that they can only move 10 inches as opposed to 20 with a march means going after war machines was really hard. They'll actually be chased down by fast cavalry, which is kind of odd for a flying unit if you think about it. And you could have 2 Tomb Guard models for the price of 1 Carrion model. So Warhammer The Old World, these guys need something better in terms of rules to make them usable, and they definitely need new models as well to go with it. Yeah, not my favourite. Next up is a complete flip turn the other way around. Something that not only looked fantastic, it was one of the brand new plastic kits. It was a dual kit. It also performed well as well. This is the Kemrian War Sphinx that comes with its 4 times Tomb Guard crew in the howdah that you see on the top. So stats wise, it's got high toughness and leadership with good wounds and attacks, low weapon skill and initiative. Equipment wise, you get spears for your Tomb Guard crew, and it does have the option to take an envenomed sting for all attacks to be poisoned except the crew and Thunder Crush, or a fiery roar, which was a strength 4 breath attack with flaming 4 points. Unit size obviously coming 1. This is a large monster on the tabletop. So you get Killing Blow, which applies to the crew only. It's an animated construct, so it's a 5+ armor save, which doesn't seem great, but you have to balance that with the fact that how toughness worked back then, and it is a toughness 8 model. Toughness 8 is incredibly high in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, so that did make it very hard to wound. Howdah crew, they use their own stats to attack, But when they're attacked back, it's done against the monster's toughness of 8. So that made the crew a lot more durable. It was a large target, so you couldn't get cover modifiers. Did cause terror, though, so it's immune to psychology, causes fear, and a charged unit must take a panic test. And if they fail, they must flee. It did have the option, interestingly, for this Thunder Crush attack. So when attacking infantry, war beasts, or swarms, it could exchange all its attacks for a single small template attack. And the way that worked was you placed a small template on the unit in front of you, where you want, and essentially every model underneath the template takes a strength 3 hit. There's a hole in the middle of this template, and the single model that's underneath that hole would take a strength 9 D3 wounds hit. So if you're charging the front of an enemy unit and there's a hero there, you put the template over the hero, he will take a strength 9 D3 wound attack. But you are exchanging all your attacks to do this. Overall, it was an excellent looking model. I always had one in my army, and if you were going to take a mount for a Tomb King, this would be the one. Main target for this monster was actually large blocks of infantry, so then the breath weapon was definitely the most valuable from an upgrade perspective. So you definitely want to be looking at, the number of attacks from the crew, from the monster, plus the breath weapon, really good against those infantry units. And if you can get a Necrotech close enough, you can give it a 6+ regeneration as well. So the most vulnerable, it was pretty resistant to shooting because of toughness, but it was quite vulnerable to spells, I'd say was its biggest weakness. And overall, I felt it was pretty reasonable value for its points cost, not that much more expensive than a War Hydra, which was considered pretty exceptional at the time for monsters. So pretty good performance with an excellent looking kit, and I really hope that follows through into Warhammer The Old World. I could definitely see this coming back. It was a brand new kit at the time for the Tomb King book when it was released. It still holds up today, I think, in terms of its detail and how it fit together. A great kit. Great looking kit. Hope to see it back, and I hope it comes back with its exceptional toughness that it did have in the original book. And finally, for our Tomb King's special units, we have the other part of the dual kit for the Necropolis Knights. These are the Sepulchral Stalkers. Average move, strength, toughness and wounds with good leadership. Low weapon skill, attacks and initiative, and their equipment was the halberd that you see in their hands. Unit size was 3, the same as the Necropolis Knights. Now, they get a few rules. So they get their basic Nehekaran one, an animated construct. They get Entombed Beneath the Sands for free. But their main kind of gimmicky special rule, for want of a better term, was Transmogrifying Gaze. It's an 8-inch strength 1 magical attack. And the way it worked is you rolled the artillery dice per model that had numbers on it, and that number was then all combined, and that would be automatically hitting the enemy unit, and then you would roll to wound against initiative, not against toughness. No armor saves are allowed, and each misfire, however, did D3 automatic wounds to yourself with no armor save. So every time you roll one of these, you have a risk of rolling equivalent of a 1, which is a misfire, and you would do D3 wounds to yourself. Now, these are 3 wound models, so you have a risk of killing yourself if you roll badly. That's a bit problematic for a high wound, low model count unit. So overall, it wasn't really that popular a choice. Pretty expensive, than the better in combat, more flexible Ashabti, and their only benefit was they could move 2 inches faster than the Ashabti. For 10 points more, you could take a Necropolis Knight, who was also better in combat and had the same speed. So the shooting attack was pretty niche, very short range, and with a high risk of damaging yourself. made it a major problem. So I like the theme. I like the theme of the transmogrifying gaze, but it needs to work differently. Potentially not even have such a high risk of high damage to yourself, unless you're going to overcharge it, for example. And they need to be better to get the value out of them and their points cost. So definitely one to take a look at. Definitely good flavor, again, an aesthetic piece. That's something that you have to make your own mind up if you like their aesthetic or not. I personally do. I think it's unique, and so they look good on the tabletop, and when painted well, as you can see there, they look quite striking. They need the rules to match that. And there we go. That was the last unit in our Tomb Kings special units section of the faction focus. One section left to go, which is the rare units. That's coming up next. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you a flavour of what the models look like, how they played, how they might play in the future, and refreshed some of those old hands, or with new information for those of you that have not come across Tomb Kings before. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And as always, please hit the subscribe button. Totally free for you to do, and it means a massive amount for me, so thank you for that in advance. You've been watching The Ghost Hour. Tune back in and see what those rare units look like.